Well, welcome everyone. Couple of housekeeping things. If you can, just keep your screen off and muted just to reduce background noise. Um, as the interview is going, if you have questions, please send them to me via the chat, because at the end we're going to have some time for Q&A. So the kind of the agenda here is for 30, 45 minutes, I'll do a live interview with Ramon here about banking and his journey in leadership. And then we'll open it up the last 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes for questions. So I encourage you to be thinking about a question to ask. And hey, the harder, the better for this guy. But let me introduce myself, Kevin Johnson. I work in leadership development and consulting. And one of the areas at Express Post Training, the company I'm with, we like working in is with banks, community banks in particular. And this webinar series called Leadership Exchange in Banking, we're going to have every few months where we're interviewing a leader in banking and understanding their journey, how they themselves and their organization are navigating the industry. So thank you for being here. So let me introduce Ramon briefly. Ramon Cocolán, I've known for a long time, and he is the COO at Texas Bank. Texas Bank is, as far as size, is 200 employees, 935 million in assets, 12 locations with a new South Tyler location under construction. So Ramon, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So Ramon, um, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a COO at a community bank.
Yeah, so thanks everybody first for being here. I'm sure on a Monday after lunch it's tough, so I'll try not to put you to bed. But yeah, it started. I graduated UT Tyler back in 2005. Um, you know, I think I see some Patriots on here. So literally the weekend after I graduated, I started at a local community bank here in Tyler, which, as you can see, downtown Tyler back there. And that was back in 2005. And I started where a lot of my banking friends started, which is cashing checks and opening accounts. Uh, I started in retail banking, which is where I met Kevin. We were cashing checks together at that bank. And spent 3 or 4 years, about 4 years there at the branch. Really enjoyed learning how to give good customer service. Um, Before I had worked at a local grocery store, which was also very, very big on customer service. So I really felt like I honed in my skills there those 3 or 4 years. But it was back around 2009 that we started discussions with folks about this thing called digital banking and treasury management around my bank to the back office of those departments. They're kind of digital banking is kind of an umbrella of treasury management. It has a lot to do. Uh, if you're a TM person on here, it has a lot to do with technologies, business services, commercial products. Um, but that transition happened in 2011. So moved to the back office, and I was really more or less a support person. I was answering phone calls. At that time, getting the faxes off the fax machine and typing up the profile. Um, it For the next several years, up until about 2019, I was in that area and had made different moves there. The bank scaled. The bank I was at, it went from it was probably 3 or 4 billion when I moved to the back office, and when I left last year, it was at almost 8.5 billion. So we saw a lot of scale there. But during that time, I had the opportunity to go to Swigsby at SMU. Some may or may not know it's a banking school, and I really got to broaden my education, my insight on how banking actually worked, right? I knew how this little silo worked, but as far as how the bank made money, the business model, there was a lot of things that opened up. I actually teach at that school now. Shout out to Dr. Chittenden there at Swigsby in class 62. But it was around that time that I started having um, I knew that I wanted more. I wanted to broaden my horizons and, just through relationships that I had and different conversations that I had, the door opened up to have a conversation here with Paul Morris, the president of Texas Bank. And I got to know Paul probably back in 2019. And we had several conversations and it was just the right time, back in 2024 first part of the year. Uh, they came to me and they were kind of telling me what their strategy had been, what they were doing, how they were investing, and what they wanted to see for the future. And honestly, it was a perfect fit, right, for what my strength was treasury management, commercial clients, technology. Uh, I had never been a COO. That was going to be something new, right? Which is where you came in, to kind of help me understand things from a higher level. But it was a perfect fit, and I joined the bank May of last year, and here we are.
Awesome. Okay. So take me back. 2011, you went into treasury management, digital banking in its early form. But it sounds like you grew in that department, and and I know the end of the story there, but along the way, you became some type of manager, team leads, some type of role, correct?
That's right. When I got there, actually, I stepped away from being an assistant branch manager and I went to the back office and had no direct reports. But again, that department was scaling. But I do remember the day that I finally said, "Hey, I can't do this by myself anymore," and also, at that time, my COO and then my direct supervisor said, "Hey, it's not only time to scale the product, but it's time to scale the department." And where before I was kind of doing both consumer and treasury management or commercial, that's when I really dedicated myself to commercial, and that's when I had my first employee, at least from that back office perspective.
Mhm.
Getting to train him and enlighten him on everything I had learned in the last just couple of years, uh, and that was a real that opened my eyes to what I had learned. I didn't realize I had, you don't know sometimes what you know until you teach it. And even though I've been a teacher for a long time in Sunday school and just different things I volunteer in, I'd never done it at work before. So it was something new for me. But that was the first time in this role, in the back office role, that I did need to scale my management skills.
So as that department grew, um, what shift um, was required from you to move from the guy who did it all and the expert to building a team that could execute? Talk to me about those early year leadership mindset shifts.
Yeah, I'm a very task oriented person by nature. Right? If you give me something, part of what got me to where I'm at is if you give me something, I'm gonna do my best to knock it out, and with very little help, right? That's something that just the passion and maybe my work ethic that I was raised with. Like I said, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm patting my mom and dad on the back for that. Um, but when it comes to managing people, that same passion can also be an enemy, right? And initially, in fact, I have a story that I tell a lot of my employees uh, when I first came to a crossroads between being just a great worker that got the opportunity to be a manager because I was the best at it
Right.
versus learning how to truly manage and lead people. I have a story, and I don't mind sharing it. I had a young man that worked for me, and I remember one year we had the end of year review, and I think I told you the story, Kevin. We had an end of year review, and I said, so and so, hey, give me any feedback you have about me that you think could help us, as we scale this thing. And he said, Ramon, he said, "You're one of the hardest workers." He's like, "Man, every time we have a question, you have the answer." He's like, "But I'll be honest with you." He's like, "None of us enjoy working with you and for you." And that really took me aback because I
Yeah.
was doing something. I thought that I was hitting the mark, and I didn't realize I was completely missing the mark because I wasn't leading them. I was assigning tasks, I was checking their homework, but I wasn't leading them, and
Right.
that was really for me where my mindset. I knew I had to change.
Wow. You know, at that moment, you were blind to the impact or lack of impact you were having, right? Until that employee had the courage to give you that feedback. And it's funny because I work with a lot of leaders, and the statistics are pretty clear that the largest reason a person leaves a job is because they don't like their boss. It's not the only reason, but it's statistically most people leave a job because they don't like who they're working for. But when I work with leaders, and let's say I work with 300 or 400 leaders a year, if I were to ask about turnover in their place of business and say, well, do you think it's because of you? No, no, none of those 300 or 400 would say, yeah, it's because of me, right? We have to be careful as leaders, and I'm saying this just for the group, that we have to reflect on our leadership because it can be a blind spot. Am I the type of leader people want to follow? So that's good, Ramon. So um, before we move on to kind of another phase of the interview in your journey, what do you think the core change was after that feedback? Where did that take, what journey did that take you down to make some changes?
Yeah, no, I can tell you, at that same time, I feel like God was doing something, right? He was revealing some things, one with the courage of that young man, which I text him periodically and thank him for that moment that he shared with me. But there were some personal things that me and my wife were going through and trying to have children and wasn't happening. And we were kind of met. This is a long story, really, really short. We were kind of met with an opportunity or really a decision to say, hey, are you going to be, are you actually going to grow up? Right, and take steps to be the father that you want to be, right, or the husband you need to be, because my wife had some medical issues. All this stuff was happening at the same time, and so because all this stuff was happening in my personal life, I just had this earth-shattering news that I received from my employee. I was like, you know what, I need to do something. Right. And I was raised, and Kevin, you know me, I was raised with the good stuff. Right. My parents I have great parents. I had a foundation of being raised in church. And, that is my secret. Right. That is what's in my heart, in my gut of who I am. But I was at a point in my life where I was not exercising those things. I wasn't exercising or executing on what I knew was right to do. Right. I was just so for me, uh, it was those moments put together that said, you know what, I just have to take a step into this thing called leadership. In my case, I feel like I was avoiding it. Right.
Okay.
I was marking off my checklist by saying I work hard. I've gotten this far responsibility. Right. I'm making this money. I'm on a good trajectory, but I could not have imagined in that moment, right, what I was being prepared to do, right,
Okay.
and really what steps of growth I was going through. But it was really a mindset shift uh, from the core of who I am. It wasn't because at that moment at that bank that I was at, oh, okay, well, I've been asked to be a leader. Even though it was kind of revealed that I wasn't
Okay.
tasked with being a leader, right? I
I
feel
see.
like life kind of tasked me with growing up and
Mhm.
and doing what I needed to do to become the leader that I could be.
Okay. You know, it sounds like Ramon was really focused on Ramon. Would you explain a little bit more? If you weren't focused on leading personally or professionally the way you ought to, what were you focused on? What was driving you?
I think that probably the thing that drives a lot of young people, is they're trying to figure out what is it that they have to do to make it.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what it was doing. And I'm only speaking for me, right?
Right.
Uh, I feel like it was creating a very superficial um, leader. It was creating just kind of enough to mark the checkbox to say, yes, I'm leading. But if that leadership was actually tested, like if when times got tough,
Right.
actually caved, right? Because it was only a top level what appeared to be a leader. And yes, it's because I was in some ways kind of being led by money, by title, right? The things that a lot of young people get caught up in, right? And
Hmm.
not really knowing how to play the game, but not really, you know, having the foundation of what it truly takes to be a leader.
So last question on leadership before we switch to kind of the broader subject of banking. Why why put effort into growing as a leader in the first place? Why is leadership relevant? Why is it important for you?
I think one, I think it started from a selfish place. Honestly, I felt like, or I knew, right? I've received good example because I had good examples growing up, right? And mentors that were around me. I knew that that was the answer, right? And I knew that the outcome of being the leader that you should be created a much, cleaner path, if you will. I just didn't want to, in the moment, I didn't want to take on all the responsibility and the accountability that came with that cleaner path, right? It's just, I can't think of a great example right now, but if I'm in downtown Tyler, if you've driven in downtown Tyler, you know that they're doing a ton of construction down here. And a lot of these brick roads that have been here for decades are just completely, they're in bad shape. In order to fix that, somebody's going to have to get up there with the excavator, pull those bricks up and fix whatever the problem is underneath and relay them. It's not an easy thing. And I think
Okay.
for me, it was just getting to the point where I knew that it was going to take me changing some things.
Okay. So let's talk about banking, then we'll marry the two, the leadership and the banking. So let's talk about banking. What you've been in it, you've been in the banking industry over 20 years. What have you seen in the last few years, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, that has changed in the banking industry?
Yeah, I think we're like everybody else where, COVID changed the world, right? It changed society. It changed the economies. I mean, the money that was printed, right? If there's some bankers on here, I mean, the rates going to zero, the effect that had uh, on inflation, right? What inflation has done to just the pay scales, right? There was a period there where all industries and banks specifically had to raise their pay scale. A lot of folks went home, right? When people went home during that time, the a lot of talent across all industry, but a lot of talent across banking went home, right? They're like they retired. So there was a major shift in employment. The economies of scale shifted. Um, I think during that time as well, Kevin, our society became more divided, right, for several reasons, but the scrutiny people had, right, toward each other, toward services they receive is definitely heightened.
Right.
Uh, the roles that banks play, which it's a unique role, right? We're holding people's assets, their most important assets, a lot of time their money, right? Of course, for us, it's on the liability side, right? Because we owe it to them. We got to be able to give it back. Uh, but all those things tied together really created, in some form or fashion, a negative mindset toward banking,
Mhm.
right? Even though the banks did a lot of great things, the PPP program, regardless of what people may have thought about it, right? Community banks. I remember where I was at, it was all hands on deck, right? We had to build a program and technologies and at the same time be able to work remotely from home. Like it was banking really jumped on that, but the after effects of that still are with us today, right? I think what has happened in society now is a lot of folks are looking for another option for their money besides a bank, right? We talk about fintechs, neobanks, right? These are the Chimes of the world, the Veros, right? The SoFis of the world that are not banks.
Mhm.
They're technology companies, right? Doing bank stuff. And
Mhm.
the adoption of that is unbelievable. Right now, as the administration has shifted over, this year we had the Genius Act, right, which is related to stablecoin issuance, but now we're talking, we're before blockchain and cryptocurrency, all that stuff was stuff out there that was not safe, that was scary, that man, a bank would never touch that. Now they're writing rules. I mean, as early as last week, the OCC approved 5 charters for basically stablecoin issuers.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how the whole environment, again, you can't just say it's COVID, right? But it's the technology adoption. It's how
Mhm.
people have become have learned to scrutinize more and where their money's at, and just how easy they want to be able to transact. So it's competition, it's regulation. In banking, it's all of that.
Mhm. 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 What about something you brought up that I see a lot across industries is the generational shift in the workplace. So if a lot of people decided to end their careers, let's say, a little earlier than they wanted, are you seeing a younger workforce having to come into the banking world?
Yeah, I feel like I got old really quick. I was just 22 yesterday and
There is a
I'm
lot of
40,
gray. There is a lot of gray you got going on.
right? Don't look up there. Um, you know, and I know it's a problem with every industry. Banking is and we've talked about this, banking is very siloed, right? So it's really hard sometimes to get somebody that understands the whole thing, but
Okay.
it's even harder sometimes to get somebody in that silo and help them understand and become a subject matter expert. And I would tell you, it is very difficult, right, to one, for a young person to be excited these days to come work in banking because of how complex it is,
Right.
right? And also because of the entry level part of it. I told you where I started. Me and you were there, right? We
Mhm.
were cashing checks. There's a lot of young people that aren't willing to do that, right?
Mhm.
And if they are, they're willing to do it for a little bit for it to be a job. But as far as turning it into a career, I think those dynamics are different these days, right? So yes, this next generation, it's a little more difficult, and that older generation that um, you know maybe has more of an old school mentality, maybe and again, I'm saying this just from experience, right? And sometimes the way I am, a lot of times we use that knowledge as our power or our control. And young people, it's hard sometimes with young people when they learn different, right? Than another demographics or another age scale,
Mhm.
if you will. They learn different, and sometimes it's hard to connect the two, right? It's kind of like if you put me in there, just to use church as an example, it'd be hard for me to go in there and teach the children's class,
Mhm.
because it's hard for me to get down on their level, right? Even at 43, sometimes you have a little bit of that, right? You have personality differences, you have different views of the world, and that's a dynamic, frankly, that 15 years ago, I don't remember it being such a big thing,
Okay.
uh, but it is a big thing. It is a
Yeah,
big thing.
it is. So how is Texas Bank navigating today's banking environment with these challenges and these changes?
Yeah, I think, and part of what I've been tasked to do, right, was to come in and understand where the bank was, where it's at now, and then where it's headed, right? And I knew when I got here that um, that was going to take me taking time to understand the layout. Um, you know, what I figured out so far, and it's still a process, right? We obviously we're doing have an investment going on in North Texas there, north of Salina and Gunter. Of course, South Tyler should be ready by the end of next year. It'll be a branch and a operation center.
Hmm.
Um, but part of what we're doing is products, processes, and people, and not necessarily in that order. I
Right.
think it's a holistic thing.
Hmm.
Uh, I've again, those that are in banking, you understand. I've had every conversation that you could think of with our vendors, what their product roadmaps are. I've looked at every contract, when it expires, what are we on? How long do we have to be on it? Looked at our processes. Why are we doing what we're doing? In some cases, um, needing to get buy-in as to, hey, we can do it different now. It's not the same way it was before. But obviously, in a partnership with Express Pros Training and yourself, we're investing in people. You can get processes and products right, but if the people aren't bought in and they don't understand the vision that the board or the executives or the shareholders, right, what they're going for, if they don't understand it, um, those products and processes are not going to they're not going to hit the target by themselves. So really, like I said, it's a three for us. It's a three-pronged, but again, holistic thing: products, processes, and people. You
I
know,
like
and,
it.
and
Yeah.
it's an investment in time, and sometimes it's capital, right? That we have to, but that's really the funnel we're trying to,
Hmm.
capture our, say, hey, this is the road to hitting the mark of what we've said we want to do.
Um, in the banking industry, my after my short stint in banking right out of college, the bulk of my career was in the healthcare space. And I saw the kind of the unfolding of the healthcare world after the Affordable Care Act uh, was kicked off. And one of the things we saw in healthcare is massive consolidation, where systems or insurance companies wanted to control really every aspect of the healthcare continuum rather than more of a buffet style that the patient could use. This imaging, this surgery, this primary, um, it all wanted to be integrated. And I know the same thing is going on in banking, a lot of consolidation. So
Yeah.
where's Texas Bank? What's their view on all that?
Yeah, first and foremost, our desire, and I know speaking on behalf of our shareholders, we plan on not going anywhere, right? There is a clearly, right, we're building branches and doing everything we've talked about. M&A, depend, and there is a ton of it. There's a ton of it in Texas right now. A lot of larger regional banks that are coming in here. You know, everyone's got different reasons for selling, right? Some of them it is because they want to provide a stronger, besides obvious financial, right, benefits. But sometimes it's, hey, we just can't find those employees, right? We just can't afford those systems. We can't afford to upgrade or deal with the headwinds of whatever blockchain technology. Is just, man, if that's where we're going, if the board believes that that's a big thing and it's for real, sometimes you have to make a move. You know, as far as we're concerned, especially in Texas, there's always going to be a huge need and desire for a local community bank, right? It's one thing for a bank from you name the state that comes in and buys a bank. There is still something to be said, especially the communities we're in, for Texas Bank, right, to not only be your bank, but also sponsor right? The little league team, right? Also, buy the uniforms, right, for the football team or whatever you name it.
Mhm.
And then not only that, but be that place that you can legitimately go to get your first, car loan or get
Mhm.
your first mortgage, right? A
Mhm.
lot of banks say they can do that, but they do very little of it, right? Because they're grabbing your deposits locally, but they're lending somewhere else, right?
Mhm.
For us, our view is that community banking it is, and I'm not saying we're the only one, right? We need a lot of community banks. We feel right that the best thing for our ecosystem is that people have a choice of banking, and it creates competition between banks, right? And that's good for the consumer.
Mhm.
And it means that, hey, we have to be on our A game. Come challenge us on our customer service. Come challenge us to see if we can't close, your home loan faster than the next, right? Uh, we won't say necessarily come challenge us on rates, right? But we're willing to do it. Why? Right?
Mhm.
We've done it. Um, we think community banking is what's best for our local economies,
Mhm.
right? And we understand that merger and acquisition uh, are they happen, but I'll be honest with you, if you talk with a lot of small community banks, they will tell you that when M&A happens in their community, it is usually to their benefit, right?
Yeah. Benefits. Okay.
So we don't, a long-winded way of saying we don't mind it too much because we're here to
Yeah.
serve. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what are some of the key things Texas Bank is doing to stay competitive?
Yeah, like I said, we're definitely looking at all our vendor contracts, right? We're trying to we already don't run a enterprise system. We do our best to run a best in class system. Now, when you do that, right, there's a lot more integrations. Sometimes those things are more expensive, right? Because you're not going just with whatever the core provider is offering. Um, also uh, not just learning about how we can make what we have now better, but also looking to the future, right? Educating ourselves about what's out there. Uh, we have a group of folks, senior leaders that we have here, and you've met several of them, that we are educating ourselves on where AI fits, right? Where does, stablecoin and blockchain technology, where does it fit, right? And we feel
Mhm.
like it's our job to educate our board, right? All of our executives to say, hey, here's where it could fit. Here's what it is. What can we do with it, right? We're not just going to bury our head in the sand and say, it's not going to happen. Oh, it's not, we're trying to stay out ahead,
Mhm.
and in an honest assessment, sometimes for smaller banks, we tend to believe that, we're kind of protected by those outside circumstances, right? Because we're worried about our little community but as you grow, right, and I believe that you have to aspire to grow to stay relevant as
That's
a
right.
community bank. You have to have those conversations. So capital investment, um, you know, staying educated, and obviously what we're doing with you, not just education from the technical side of things,
Mhm.
but leadership, right? How, with all these changes in our environment, right? Because our environment is changing whether we want it to or not.
Right.
How do we prepare our employees, whether they've been here 2 months, they've been here 2 decades, for the change that they'll have to make?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. How is leading and managing those change efforts going for you? What have you found to be effective and ways you have created momentum?
Yeah, and you were obviously right there with me at the beginning on a personal level. Uh, when I first got here, I don't mind saying it, I was scared to death. It was a new role for me. I didn't realize the good and bad that I was coming into, right? And anywhere that you guys work, or there's going to be good, bad, and different, right? Here, because the friends that I had for 2 decades were no longer there. If I had a bad day, I couldn't just walk into their office. I always kind of felt like I was by myself. And at that, I'm an executive, right?
Mhm.
They bring me in as an executive, and who is this guy? This guy hadn't been with us here the last 20 years with everything we've been doing. We haven't needed him then. Why do we need him now? I met some of that, So for me, I knew that I couldn't go in there early on or come in here early on and just try to win with personality or with maybe wit.
Or how
I,
smart.
I knew that I had to, at some level, share my heart, share my purpose, right? Of course, um, I didn't have all the vision built in yet because I was brand new. But I knew that what I did have to do was be open and honest to say, hey, Michael, I know this area here. This area here, I don't understand it. I need you to help me understand it, because when I have a good understanding, we're going to work together and see if there's a better way, right? Christina, I know this area really well, and I had to be ready, right, in some moments where Christina's like, well, I've never seen that. Well, that's good, right? We're perfect for each other because I've seen it, right?
Hmm.
And creating those personal relationships with those people, right? That was going to allow me to later on possibly present a change that needed to be made, right?
Hmm.
And they didn't have to have a doubt in their mind that, where is this coming from?
Right.
This coming from just because I just looked and said, we need to change that just so I can say that I changed it, and it's a notch in my belt.
Right.
It's truly something that had a purpose or a vision behind it. And that's been really effective for me. And it took a little longer. And again,
Right.
in all to you, Kevin, and your guidance and your help, we have created the culture internally to have these discussions. And I will tell you, I don't mind telling you, it was not easy at first.
Right. Good, Ramon. So you are a high performer and you're a go-getter. And, looking back in your early leadership career, you were so hyper focused on performance and getting things done, you forgot the people side of leadership. And it sounds like you've learned your lesson here. So now as you lead in this new higher way, broader responsibilities, you're taking the time to make those connections with the people you lead. And that does take longer, right? And so just briefly, just speak to how you've had to learn, not just in this, but over the years, that sometimes that change and people adopting that change and executing that change might be a little slower than you want because you'd be ready right now. How have you managed that impulse to push hard when you got to dial it back a tad to make sure the people are on board?
Yeah. I've had the one blessing that I've had is, um, I think because of the way I came in, and the way that I knew, and again, it was based on my own personal experience, right? I've
Mhm.
gone through that before, and things came in and things were going to change just because things were going to change. And honestly, I put myself on the other side of the seat because I had been there.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell you, right, that I didn't have a burning desire to, you know, do that. And then Texas Bank would be just absolutely, ahead of the game and everything. I wanted it. You know me, I have that passion to do that. But I also don't want to run over my employees that are going to be the ones doing it.
Right.
And I created such a relationship, and literally, there's no secret to it. I literally said, if I'm going too fast and if this is too much, and I got in front of that senior leadership team and I said, you tell me.
Hmm.
because sometimes it is hard for me to gauge, right? Because I am running out of motor. Essentially, I've given folks veto power with me to not tell me necessarily no, but I've given them a break. You know,
Right.
push the and I don't have to guess as to when it's too much, right?
Good.
Because they tell me, and
Good.
that can be. I understand that's not everybody's style, but I know that's the most effective way, right? I'd rather take longer to do something the right way than slap something together the wrong way,
Yeah.
right? And then you've lost time because you have to come back and address it again.
You do, and it costs more. It always
You
costs.
come.
Well, the last thing here, Ramon, then we'll go to questions, is just for our banking audience here. Um, I'm sure they hold various positions in their banks and have various levels of leadership and responsibility. So generally speaking, to a broad diverse group here, what's one piece of advice you would give a leader in banking during these times of change and adjustment?
Yeah, I think if you consider, and I would think if for you to join a leadership uh, webinar at 2:15 in the afternoon, you're either a leader in your bank or wherever you are, or you desire to be one. Um, we have to learn how to sacrifice. You have to learn how to sacrifice. You have to learn how to see the vision and have purpose and share that vision, share that purpose. And to me, I would tell you, in order for you to show up every day with the goods, right?
Hmm.
One thing that I learned over the last 3 or 4 years of my life is that it doesn't necessarily matter your volume,
Okay.
right? Everyone has a different volume to their. Some people are less passionate, less loud than others. But what does matter is your temperature. If you
Okay.
come in one day, right, and you're really, really hot on something, and then the next day you have another situation, but you're really, really cold on it, and you're making your employees ride that wave,
Right.
it's very frustrating, right,
Yep.
to deal with. And my advice would be, I don't, it doesn't matter what it is, uh, doesn't matter who it is, or what it is, but you have to find something to fill your cup, daily. And it's got to be purposeful, right?
Yep.
I think there was moments in my life that I was the leader that I probably shouldn't have been the leader. Somebody
Right.
should have took the position from me because I wasn't ready to do it, right? Um, find someone, uh, and ask for help. I said, if you get yourself in a situation where you're in over your head from a leadership standpoint, I was a little bit over my head last year. I don't mind telling you that. And I called my friend Kevin, right? And it's one of those things where we have to be willing as leaders to understand that we have a lot of power, we have a lot of control. And just like we can help something, we can really hurt something. And that
That's
is
right.
something that I like to be aware of daily. I check myself at the door every day, right, to make sure that my temperature is right. And I'm not fake. I try not to fake it till I make it. There's days that you may have to do that, right? But my hope is that I'm taking care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually, uh, and actually carry myself like when I walk in the door that what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna do, the decision I'm gonna make is gonna affect a lot of people.
Mhm. That's good, Ramon. That's really good, man. We could unpack that more. But in honor of our medium here today, I want to get to some questions. So, um, let's see here. We got some appreciation for your genuineness and vulnerability in your journey. Okay, here's a question from Jason. Have you seen M&A as a disruptive labor market force in East Texas? And do you and Texas Bank view this as an opportunity?
You know, uh, I'm trying to think real quick about the banks that are here. Um, I don't necessarily want to put them on blast. I know there's some that locally, yes. There is opportunity there for those types of employees, right? A lot of times, Kevin, when these M&As happen, it's a lot of the operational peoples that kind of suffer the bad side of M&A, right? Because there's always somebody back at headquarters that's already doing that. Um, Currently, where we're at, um, obviously we're bringing up South Tyler. We have a 3-story branch and more lease space and operation center in Prosper. We have the ability, right, um, to go after, right, talent. But I will tell you that right now, that talent accumulation here has happened in the last year and a half.
Okay.
Uh, we're kind of set on that until we turn on the other side of the strategy, right? And that's the part that I can't necessarily divulge. It is an opportunity, uh, with people being able to, work remotely from home, right? That's really an opportunity for all of us. But uh, again, I do see M&A being something that in the next 2 or 3 years specifically, uh, with this administration that we
Hmm.
have in place and what they're opening up to, uh, we're going to see a ton of it.
Hmm. Good. Just a housekeeping thing. I changed the messaging to where when you message, it'll just come to me. So the messaging is working. So just type your questions in, then it'll come to me and I'll read them out. So here's one. What are you doing to make sure momentum survives leadership turnover or industry changes?
Yeah. Um, for us, I think that's twofold. I think internally, I think Kevin minds me saying, Express Roast training is coming in right now for senior leaders every other month to our senior level group. And essentially, my desire is to see, okay, we're gonna spend some time meeting together about uh, where the bank is headed and where we're going. I'll tell you, one thing that we're doing is we're having a core conversion that we're going through here really soon, right? So as we pull that way, I don't want to leave the leadership mindset behind, right?
Hmm.
So as much as possible, um, we want to, with intent, right, on purpose, set reminders, right, to meet together, whether that be individual or as a group. Uh, and then I do the same thing with my executives, folks, right? We're talking senior level meetings, but our executives, we meet once a week, right? And
Hmm.
we understand, and we don't just talk about, numbers.
Hmm.
We talk about those three things I mentioned: products, processes, and people, right? And not that Texas Bank didn't do that before, but as the bank scaled, and just real quickly, this bank doubled in size over the last 5 years, right?
Okay.
So it was real easy to get disconnected
Oh
really
yeah.
fast,
Oh yeah.
you know? And then you have the East Texas market that's been here since the 70s, right? And then all of a sudden, Prosper, Frisco, Anna, Van Alstyne, where's that? Who are those people, right? So, um, really creating a line of communication, right? We just launched, I know for some this is nothing, but we launched our intranet just about a month ago. We didn't have an intranet, right? We didn't have a way to connect, right? We updated our communication systems, right? And made it easier for people to communicate and see faces and have conversations and um, holistically, not just at the branch level, right? But brought the team together and then shared communication downstream.
Hmm.
And that is something that where I came from, honestly, I thought we did a really great job of doing that. Um, and I wanted to bring that here, and it's been outstanding.
Good. Good. So Joel from Texas Gulf says you're
Mhm.
looking real sharp today. Wants to give you a shout out.
Hey, Joel. Yeah.
Um, he said one more question from him is, and then we've got a few others too. And keep them coming. Y'all are doing a great job sending those in. What did you or the team, as y'all are navigating these changes, what's one or two things you stopped doing? to make sure you're staying focused and navigating the changes successfully.
That's a good one. Um, you know, and again, this is any organization USA, right? That this can happen in. We set the tone early that nobody here was building a kingdom,
Right.
right? And again, that sounds ominous, right? I didn't come in and say, hey, this used to be yours. It's not anymore, right? It's not that. The thing we stopped doing is, and I'm going to mess this up, we stopped not communicating,
Mm-hmm.
right? We didn't take we're not taking our little thing and running over here and hiding it, right? We're actually saying, hey, check this out. Give me some feedback. One of
There
the
you
things that is very natural inside of a bank, because we're regulated, because we're audited all the time, because the credit department has no idea, right, what the operations people are doing, right? Nobody knows what IT is doing, right? We just blame them for everything, right? Where are the lenders at? Who knows, right? What is treasury management? What does that mean? It is naturally siloed, right? And you have to communicate with intent.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a small bank and you're just used to, yeah, I just call them, well, you have to do that with intent, right? And sometimes it has to happen from a higher perspective than just the people that, I hate to say it this way, that you like, right,
Mm-hmm.
or that you get along with, and not really truly your peers. So the thing that we are not doing anymore, that we had to stop, is not communicating.
I like it. That's good. That's good. Okay. Um, from from David, we've got two questions, but I'll give them one to you one at a time. I know you can't handle too much at once.
I'm slow.
Best advice you ever received as a banker?
From a banker.
As a banker.
Oh man, that one's easy. Years ago, when I moved from being the assistant branch manager, into being data input guy in digital banking, you would assume that that was a pay cut,
Right.
and it was. It was
Right.
like a 30% pay cut for me. And one of my really good mentors just retired a month ago, and I'll put him out there. Mr. Brian McCabe told me years ago. He said, sometimes, and I'm getting emotional. Sorry, you have to take a step back to take a step forward.
For sure.
Right now, he sold me on that because I got a huge pay cut, right? So he was like, sometimes you got to take a step back to take a step forward. But that was, I'm not sure that's very banker related, but I would tell you that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
You got to get out of your own way,
Yeah. It's
right, before you get your feet set, before you start climbing.
yeah, it's career related, but it's also just growth related. You think about your leadership journey, you had to take a step back too. You thought you were just running and gunning, leading, and then you got some feedback like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're really not making as much progress as you thought, Ramon." You know,
Yeah.
that's good. And then from David as well, he said, "What is your top book recommendation to read next year?"
Well, outside of the Bible, I would tell you, uh, there's a book out there called, Answers from Questions.
Okay.
Uh, uh, I got a free copy, and the gentleman sent me the copy, and I read it last year. It's on two or three different volumes now, but essentially learning how to ask questions
Good.
of people to get answers, right? We're not Leaders sometimes are really good about telling you what to do. We're not really good about asking you, you know.
Right.
And again, that's for me. In all openness, I'm not the greatest reader in the world. Um, like I said, I do stick to my daily proverbs and all that. But I would definitely recommend, John Maxwell. Love his all his stuff. follow a lot of his stuff, read a lot of his stuff. I don't know that in the moment I can name you just one specifically.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay. Do you know a guy named Oscar?
Oh, I know a guy named Oscar.
All right, he's got a question for you.
Oh my goodness.
Um, let's see here. This thing's in my way. Um, what's your take on is it who you know or what you know?
Yeah. For me, what I knew got me to who I know.
Okay.
Right. So my education, my passion to know, to grow, to learn led me to the right people.
Hmm.
Right. And I think it can go the other way too. Right. If you know the right people and you listen to them, they can tell you where to find water, right? Where the answers are. So it's a combination, you know, it's a combination. For me, it definitely has been um, a combination. I would tell you, I'm sifting through my life right now in my mind, and it's sometimes it started with a person and always led to a thing. Sometimes it started at a thing and it always led to a person.
Nice. All right. His second question is if your boss asked, who do you work for? What, how would you answer that?
If my boss asked who I worked for, how would I answer that? I work for Texas Bank.
Okay. I don't know where Oscar's going with that. Maybe he wants you to say the customer or something or the shareholder.
Yeah,
What did,
yeah. No, I mean, I don't think there's any wrong answer there. My hope would be that uh, as an employee, that we're looking out for what's the best interest in the bank, right? And obviously shareholders are everyone would tell you that's the most important, right? Um, but I think what's in the best interest of the bank, I've always answered that. And again, that's something that I got from uh, my former CEO. We're here for the bank. Um, so that would be my answer.
Mhm. Good. Well, Ramon, we're right at time. Thank you so much for taking time to do this. It's great to hear your story, and it's great to hear just how you're thinking about banking right now and leading a great community bank, being one of the members of Texas Bank that's leading it into the future. So best of luck to you in your journey, and I look forward to working with you more. And for those that are on the webinar here. So expressprostraining.com, EXPRESS, Express Pros, PROS training.com is a way you can check us out and access us. Our contact information is there. We'd love to work with you and your bank if you ever need help in navigating change on the people side of business. Ramon, thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day and a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks everybody for joining. Merry Christmas, everybody.